Legend of Total War here, and today I wanted to discuss a little bit more about the topics that are being discussed within the community, especially on the Total War subreddit. I do feel as though these discussions have been very constructive and well-intended, and I applaud the Total War subreddit for the way that they're behaving themselves over the past few days, because what I'm seeing here is discussion without any vitriol, without a lot of bitterness. People aren't attacking other people for differing opinions. Obviously, you will get some bitter people, but they mostly get downvoted, just removed from the conversation, and people are allowed to voice their opinions about what's going on with gaming in general. I think that this isn't something that's just isolated to Total War, that gamers in general, especially anything that's to do with like AAA developers, there is a big sort of gamer revolt that's going on at the moment, where there's a line in the sand that we just refuse to let these gaming companies cross, because they are abusing the trust that we've put into them, where they're either reducing the amount of quality that they are putting into the content that they're trying to sell us, and they're increasing the price, and they're not really giving us good justification for it, apart from, we need to make more money, more profits, stakeholders. The thing is, it's not the gamers' problem that the stakeholders aren't getting gigantic investments during tough economic times. You're not going to find any sympathy with that kind of stuff, and nor should they. This isn't the time for that. So gaming is a pastime. It's a privilege to have it. It's not an essential, but that doesn't mean that we should just be drowning these gaming companies in money for not really improving much standard. Because if we have a look at Total War just on its own, Total War has not really improved over the past few years. If you have a look at Total War Warhammer 3, the technology in Total War Warhammer 3 does not seem any better than it was in Total War Warhammer 2. There are some improvements, some quality of life improvements, but there's also a lot of really big downgrades in Total War Warhammer 3 that just simply are not being addressed. And I think a lot of people are finally getting sick of that and starting to have some pushback on it, which is good. There's a lot of areas that we can praise Creative Assembly, but also a lot of areas that they need to be criticized on, that they can do a lot better. If they want to increase the price, they need to do better. I feel like that's what makes sense. So we've got this first thread open here that says, do you think complaining about Shadow of Change, price and content, will make a difference? Where the majority of people voted no, but it might affect future DLC. I don't think that conversation alone is going to affect the pricing of future DLC. I think that the price that they've set forward here, $25 or 25 euros, is pretty much the set price for what they were going to have for the Thrones of Decay. I don't think they were thinking to putting that one for $30. I'd be very surprised if a few months from now they put forward a $30 price tag on that. I'd be very surprised with that. But I don't think that was their plan to begin with. In terms of bringing the price down, I don't think that the conversation here is going to do anything. It's just that what is likely happening at Creative Assembly is that community managers who are paid to monitor this situation are collecting this information and passing it up to the executives who can't be bothered to read it because they're too busy driving their golden Lamborghinis or whatever. So they get this curated information, and then they assess whether or not they should increase or decrease or stay the course with any of the pricing. Because they're the ones that actually do next to none of the work, and they generate, so they receive the majority of the financial benefit that Creative Assembly actually produces. The actual money that these games and DLCs make very rarely gets put back into the actual game itself. Like, if you look at Total War Warhammer, right, and Warhammer 2 specifically, the revenue that Warhammer 2 generated was mostly not put back into the development of Warhammer 3. That was very obvious that revenue went into expanding the company, or it went to the pockets of businessmen, essentially. People who don't actually care about Total War whatsoever. They just have a business degree or whatever. I'm not too familiar with this stuff, but all I know is that they definitely have these kind of people working at the company at the top who are making these decisions. They don't care about the actual game, about the product whatsoever. They just see us as a tap which they can squeeze shitloads of money out of, and put into other quite cynical ventures like Hyenas, where they're just chasing trends, they're just chasing dollars, but these are not creative works that they're actually making. Again, I'm not too familiar with Hyenas. It doesn't look like a good game, but then again, it's not, that type of game doesn't appeal to me in the first place. But anyway, conversation alone is not going to affect the future of DLC. What will affect the future DLC is how actually successful this DLC is. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people right now stating that they're going to boycott it, and there's been a few people saying that they have refunded their DLC, and it's very important to no longer pre-order any DLC or content from not just for Creative Assembly, from any game studio whatsoever. There's really no incentive to do it. You're not benefiting from it. Even if you can afford it, just wait at least until day one before or the day before you purchase anything. There's just no reason whatsoever to pre-order it. So the loss of those pre-orders definitely hurts, or hurts Creative Assembly, that is, but only by a small amount. It really depends on post-launch whether or not this DLC sells as well as previous DLCs in terms of raw revenue, not in terms of units sold. So, for example, if they look at this, let's just say 3 weeks after the launch, and they look at the sales and it says, oh look, even though we sold fewer units of Total War Warhammer's Shadow of Change, we actually made just as much, if not more, revenue than the previous DLC. That means we were vindicated in increasing the price, and so we'll do that in the next one. Keep the price or increase it, if that is what happens. But if they look at it and say, oh look, we actually made significantly less in this period than we did in the previous periods, we should probably put this DLC on sale and think about scaling back the price on the other DLC, because clearly the price is too high now. We're actually costing the company, because that's how you get them to enact change. You have to hit them where it actually hurts them. They don't care about mean words, about going onto the game and posting a negative review. There's a lot of that going on. I'll get into that in a bit. That's not going to hurt the people that are actually making these decisions. The only thing that is going to hurt them, and you guys are actually starting to understand this now, is you have to hit them where it actually hurts, which is their wallet. Now, the problem is how do you hit them where it hurts in their wallet while also getting what you want? Because it's easy to sit there and say just boycott it, but most people are not going to boycott it, and I'm also not advocating for boycotting it either. And there are other avenues for you to get the DLC while also not encouraging this particular price gouging. So a little bit of understanding, I think, about Steam versus third-party sources. One of the reasons that Creative Assembly might actually be doing this is to drive sales away from Steam and onto other platforms, because Steam is one of the least profitable ways to sell a unit, because the cut that Steam takes is actually quite high. Now, official third-party websites that are partnered with Creative Assembly, such as Games Planet, I've actually been in talks with Games Planet about how all this kind of stuff works, because I should be able to get a discount for you guys that, of course, I'm not taking a commission on, so I'm going to be able to get the most out of it for you, but I've been in discussions about how it works for them. From my understanding, based on the conversations I've had with their sales staff, is that the cut that Creative Assembly gets from a single sale of a DLC from a third-party website is actually bigger than what they would get from Steam. And so Creative Assembly actually would like you to purchase more of your purchases through those third-party websites, because they'll get a better cut from it, and they got no necessarily loyalty to Valve, so they want you to purchase it on Epic Games Store, they want you to purchase it on Games Planet, they want you to purchase it on all of their official storefronts where they can get a better cut. So they might be doing this to drive you outside of that, because the discounts that are offered on those websites are usually come at the cost of the actual website itself, not Creative Assembly. So Creative Assembly is not concerned about the bottom line of these partners, the third-party partners that they've got, as long as they're getting a bigger cut. So that might be one reason why they're increasing the price to get people off Steam, at least purchasing these things off Steam. That might be one reason. Again, I'm not 100% sure. It could be a little bit simpler than that. They just want more money out of it. Again, not entirely sure. Just want to give you guys some information about how some of these things work. But again, all of this stuff will factor into money stuff. Will factor into what the pricing of the next DLC is going to be, and your probably best way to actually enact change on this is to wait for a Steam sale and actually purchase it on Steam, because that way Steam gets a huge cut, and Creative Assembly, the sales that happen on Steam come at the developer's cost. because the Steam takes a percentage, I believe. So that's if you want to make it cost less, you want to not incentivize Creative Assembly to not have it so high up in the first place. Okay, so let's move on to some other discussions that are going on. So then we've got memes, things that are like good-humored ways of sort of expressing how Creative Assembly is sort of doing poor business at the moment. So I thought this one here was particularly good. Now I get why game director Richard Aldridge said no Champions of Chaos style DLC in the near future was too good in value respect to the new DLC format, even if it made a lot of sense for certain races. So I actually thought that the next DLC was going to be for the vampire accounts and that they were going to get basically a Champions of Chaos DLC for them. That's what made a lot of sense to me. Because they could definitely get 4 more Legendary Lords. There's no problem there. They've got that in the lore. And there's a lot of rework that needed to happen there. And a DLC that sort of pays for a major rework makes a lot of sense. Although I wasn't super happy with the price of Champions of Chaos, the Warriors of Chaos are now actually one of my favorite races to play, mostly when playing Be'lakor. So I'm pretty happy with the overall content from that DLC, given the long haul. But when I first played it, I wasn't super happy with it. But yeah, the meme parts here, creating a good DLC with great value for fair price. Obviously, that's exactly what we all want, and that's really what Creative Assembly should be aiming to do. But then you get sort of ridiculous amounts of greed, overpricing the DLC, calling it inflation, and that's another thing. They can hide behind this sort of inflation side of things, which that is a difficult one to counter because inflation is definitely happening, but I kind of feel like the prices that they're charging is not really fair based on inflation at all. And also, if they're hurting as a company, why is it that they are expanding the company so much and yet not actually putting that many people working on this game? So they're not putting in as much as they're getting out, not even close. So yeah, I think the inflation argument, it's a difficult one to counter, but it's one that and in fact it's not one that they use. Other people use it to defend on behalf of Creative Assembly. Creative Assembly have not once said that they've increased their prices based on inflation. In fact, they haven't once said any reason for increasing their prices. I spoke to a few of the creators that are in the Discord with Creative Assembly, and they argued against the price when they first heard about it before you guys did. And the response of Creative Assembly was, if people feel like it's worth that much, then they'll buy it. Basically saying, shut up creators, you're here to market our game, not tell us how to run our business. So again, if you feel like it is worth the price, you either purchase it or you don't purchase it. You know, do exactly what they said. And then you've got this here. Overpricing a DLC with even less value, stop bug fixing for a month and shut down all communication while completely ignoring the Total War community and annoying even the most loyal fan base. This is the most cynical take that you can have with Creative Assembly, I think. And that is not inaccurate. They definitely have an ignoring the Total War community, especially when this kind of stuff happens, because they're not open to conversation about this kind of stuff. Like, as an example, I have ever since Warhammer 3 first came out, that first like early access embargo, I have been trying to get better embargoes for all the creators to try to get us being able to communicate more honestly what's going on within a DLC or within a product earlier, because the current system, the way it works, which they've continued on up until now, is that you're able to show content, but you're not allowed to give a review. Now, what giving a review is can be open to interpretation, and so most creators will be very careful about their opinions and just be very mild about any particular negative opinions that they might have about the DLC, and being very targeted about specific things. And it's usually better to just showcase what you do like about the DLC, and if there's anything you don't like about the DLC or product, you just sort of don't show that. And the embargo sort of encourages you to do that. And then by the time that you can actually give a proper review, most people have already seen you play the game for however long and have probably made a pre-order purchase. And by the time you make your review detailing all the problems that you might have with the DLC, it's too late. People have already purchased it. They're already fully hyped for it. And if there's massive problems within the game or DLC, they're not going to really find out about it until it's too late, which is a big problem. I definitely want that system changed. Because it doesn't benefit you guys at all. And I think that there does need to be change with it. But unfortunately, all the conversations I've had with Creative Assembly is, we'll look at it, but this is industry standard. But I also want to point out as well that the industry standard within gaming at the moment is basically on the floor. It's not, industry standard is not a good standard to run your company, because there are some absolutely disgusting gaming companies, and I'm not talking about Creative Assembly in this as well. Games companies like Electronic Arts and Blizzard, for example. I'm hearing about some of the Diablo 4 stuff, and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm disgusted with what I'm hearing about Diablo 4. Like, the kind of bullshit with, like, the battle passes and stuff. It's like, ugh, this makes me yuck. I feel yuck thinking about Blizzard. Now, I was actually interested in getting Diablo 4. I just was a bit busy. But after seeing that kind of stuff, I'm like totally put off from buying Diablo 4, because I really hate Blizzard because of just how, like, and that's industry standard as well. And it's just on the floor. So using that as a crutch as to not improve just doesn't fly with me whatsoever. If you're a AAA company, which Creative Assembly is, you get to set the standard. So raise the standard a little bit, because the expectations are increasing, and just using it as a crutch just isn't acceptable any longer. Okay, so let's move on to the next one over here. So I like this meme a fair bit. Hang on, I've got to start over here. So, are you seriously considering paying $25 for a DLC? But Rick, CA said it's got a ton of new units, which it's funny because on the I can't remember where they posted it. They did say it's got a ton of new units, but the thing is, there were Warhammer 2 DLCs that actually introduced more units than this DLC. So this one says it introduced 11. But if you look at Warden and Paunch, for example, you've got like 10 regular units, I think, and then you've got all the Mistwalker units as well, just adding loads of different units. And then if you have a look at the Twisted and Twilight DLC, you've got 3 legendary heroes that were added in that particular DLC, plus 3 legendary lords. And of course, you could argue that Dryker was an FLC lord, which she was. But what we've got with the current situation, again, this is a lot of arguing about the number of content that is put into the game, which is not that really useful. But anyway, if you have a look at this, the current pricing is that you don't get an FLC Lord, you get an FLC hero. So you're getting Echold Hellbrass, no, I can't remember his name, which is less than what we used to get in Total War Warhammer 2. So if you're someone that didn't purchase a DLC in Warhammer 2, you at least would get something just for being part of the Warhammer 2 experience. But in Warhammer 3, if you're not purchasing the DLC, you get jack shit, basically. You get a lot less. So basically, only the people that are actually buying the content are getting more value, or even getting equal value, actually still getting less value, I suppose, than the people who aren't purchasing it at all. You're not rewarded for just staying with the game across that time. And then it says, a ton of new units, I need to call it an expert. It's barely 11 new units, definitely not worth $25. You heard the man, CA. Best I can do is $15. We're never going to see $15 again. I think that's too far gone. But I really liked this meme because I just really enjoyed it. And I think that's really good if you guys can use humor to sort of convey what's going on at the moment. So I really want to encourage more of this. And if I see more hilarious ones, I'll like bookmark them and maybe make more videos, or maybe mention them in live streams if you guys want the shout outs on your stuff. Yeah, I'll give you up for that one. I really like that meme. So this one here, that was actually from Tariff's video. That's just this one frame from his videos. Tariff's videos at the moment, they are so good. If you haven't checked out Tariff, he's just made some really good videos, and they're not even necessarily about the scummy practices of Creative Assembly. He's just making good content. You should go and check out his videos. I was actually pissing myself laughing from his Blue Scribes video the other day. It was so good. Then over here, we've got this one here, which is a bit of a comparison, $25 versus $10. So this is where it was like showing 11 units, right? And then this one here, yeah, talking about the Warden and Paunch DLC. So I kind of already covered that. Warden and Paunch DLC is actually one of my favorite ones from Total War Warhammer 2. And that actually indicated the peak player number for Total War Warhammer 2, the Warden and Paunch, which, funnily enough, that has mixed reviews on Steam. But that just might be because so many people purchased it. And it also did come with a lot of bugs. But it just has a lot of content, a lot of good content as well. And then we've got this one over here. I think this one was just really heavy in conversation. I was just reading all of this stuff here. So basically, comparing Creative Assembly to Paradox is something that's just always happened within the Total War community. And at the moment, people are giving Paradox the benefit over Creative Assembly. That's unusual. Most people would have previously said that, hey, Creative Assembly is bad, but at least they're not as bad as Paradox. Where now it's actually getting the other way around. So really, Creative Assembly, people's opinion of Creative Assembly is really starting to drop. Now this is very information heavy, so I definitely don't want to go read it out a bit. But using Stellaris as an example, I think is a really good choice, because I've been following Stellaris on and off for the entire time since it came out. And Stellaris is just a perfect example of a game that has just been really well nurtured over time. They've made mistakes here and there, but they keep nurturing it. They keep doing good patches. They keep making good content. And the great thing about the DLCs as well, and that's just mentioned here, they actually go back to previous DLCs and add more to it. And then, of course, add to the price a bit later as well. But at least they're constantly working on stuff that's come out previously. For example, with Creative Assembly, Hunter and Beast. If a paid DLC has a legendary lord that can't recruit his core units, that's a little bit of a problem. And then leaving it there for a month and a half, that's kind of pathetic, especially considering it's been proven that it's a 5-minute fix. So if we have a look over here, reminder, all it would take for CA to fix the Nakai being unable to recruit Kroxigor is adding them back into his military grouping tab. And then this guy over here in this video, showed how he managed to do it in just a couple of minutes. And this is something that a lot of people have, like, Nakai's campaign is unplayable right now if you can't recruit Kroxigors. And it's been like this for more than a month. And it's something that you could just get a hotfix on. Now, this is really indicative of where Creative Assembly sort of gave a false promise, because at the launch of Warhammer 3, Creative Assembly said that this is a game that they're going to have more regular patches on. They're going to have more DLC more regularly. Basically just to kind of have a better experience than what we had with Warhammer 2. And that's just not what's happened. It's not reflective of what they've done. The patches are still very much tied to DLC. Patch 3.1 was essentially a hotfix that actually introduced a lot of these problems. So they're just basically, okay, there's patch 3.1, there's no 3.2. And then the best that they can do for us is, okay, we'll get back to this in a month and a half when we're actually selling you guys some stuff. So that's a big issue that I think that Creative Assembly is doing at the moment. Then I want to go over here and show some Steam stuff. Now we've got to keep in mind as well that I'm in Australia. Everything that shows down here is in Australian dollars. So I do try to memorize a little bit in terms of the American dollars, because that's also about the same as it would be in euros, because that's the majority of the people doing it. So Australian dollars is just a little bit more expensive than it would be if you're in America or Europe. So if we have a look at some of these DLCs here, something that I've noticed, like if we have a look down here, man, it's really laggy at the moment. I don't know why it's doing that. If we have a look at this stuff, like the earlier DLCs, the Lord packs, they're less than half the price of Shadow of Change. But also, if you have a look at the Call of the Beastmen, any of the race packs, I reckon these prices have actually gone up recently. I don't remember them being this price, so they are actually increasing the price of essentially their entire catalog over time. There's no way. I don't think that the Rise of the Tomb Kings was $28. Correct me if I'm wrong about that. But one thing I'm also noticing here is the recent reviews. Why is it so laggy? What's going on with this? I'm just going to refresh it. Like, it's absolutely chugging. Not sure why. So yeah, a lot of people have been basically been review bombing the game. Now, I didn't do that. I've got a positive review on Steam and I didn't adjust it. And the reason for that is because I don't think that review bombing is going to make any difference. It's just a way to vent your frustrations. Ultimately, I don't think that the people in charge care one way or another about this, because Total War Warhammer 3 has been in negative reviews before. The play numbers were managing to sort of sustain throughout that. Well, that was during the launch of Warhammer 3 where it decayed massively. So it's probably hurting the game a little bit, but I think that the best way to actually discourage this kind of behavior is still voting with your wallet. I'm going to leave my positive review because I do believe it's a good game. Obviously, I don't agree with I don't agree with most of the decisions that Creative Assembly make. in regard to this game, and it's going to be a constant battle getting them to do right by this game. Just get the best product for everyone, because that's what I want there. So another thing to point out is that I do have early access to Shadows of Change. Some people pointed out that, oh, Legend, you pre-ordered Shadows of Change. I didn't pre-order it, I got it for free. Okay, that's a difference. I'm actually able to play it right now, but I'm under embargo, so I obviously can't show you. I can't talk about certain things. But one thing that I'm going to try to do is make sure that I don't over deliver the content during this time to sort of massively advertise it. I've got a couple of videos planned to showcase some of the units. There's things that I want to talk about that I can't talk about until a certain date. I don't know in terms of what I'm going to do in terms of live streaming, because there's massive restrictions, and I know the first thing people are going to ask is, oh, Legend, is it worth the $25? And I can't answer that for you. I've got opinions about it, and I do want to be as transparent as I can be, but the embargoes are basically a noose around my neck at the moment, and I gotta be really careful about what I say. So most of the content I think I'm gonna make over the next few days and weeks will still just be patch 3.1 and not on Shadows of Change. Again, I do have a couple of videos planned, but I just don't have a lot of stuff planned. Anyway, I really want to be able to communicate to you guys with it all, but you have to be patient with me with it. Anyway, I think that's enough for today about the conversations on all this stuff. I do hope you guys continue what you're doing with the Total War subreddit. I think it is very constructive. I will continue to read it and keep laughing at all the memes that you guys post. I really do enjoy it. I feel a lot more camaraderie with the Total War subreddit at the moment. I've had my issues with it, but at the moment, I feel like we're aligned on the same path, so I want to encourage you as much as possible to keep doing this kind of stuff. Anyway, that's the end of this one here, guys. Appreciate you. Even everybody that's not subscribed, appreciate the entire community. I just want that all of you guys to get what you paid for. I think that's the most important thing. I don't want any of you to feel like you've been shafted by the developers or by, I guess, the executive decisions that are being made. That's the end of this one. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time. Later, guys.